Welcome to the BCS Chester and North Wales event for April. And I am delighted to be able to introduce Stuart to you this evening, who's going to talk about all the wonderful worlds of ITAM. Now, we've got a couple of channels open, one of which Stuart will go through as part of his talk, but as always, we have got the Zoom chat available. So if you do want to ask any questions or put any comments in the Zoom chat, myself and Martin from the committee will keep an eye on that. If you're having any technical issues, pop it in the chat and Martin will come back to you on that. But without further ado, Stuart, master of all things ITAM, early careers representative for the BCS ITAM group, who also do wonderful events. I'm going to go over to you.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody this evening. So let me start my screen rolling. I'm going to start off with a little bit of a story. Just talk about a global manufacturing company that I've worked with in the past. They'd implemented ITAM best practices, which included maintaining an accurate inventory of their IT assets, conducting regular security assessments. And during one of those assessments, it was discovered that there was a server that had been deployed by mistake or outside of their normal controls is probably a better description of that one. And it was found that this server was running a compromised version of Windows Server. It was very old version and outdated and vulnerable to cyber attacks. What they then did was identify that where that machine was through those asset registers, and were able to define it and remove it from their systems very, very quickly, and have an IT response team that prevented the abilities of cyber criminals to take that compromised system in there. And this is a reason why ITAM is very, very good for your organizations from a security perspective. You know, question to everybody is, think how long would it take you to identify a potentially compromised asset within your systems? Working proactively is definitely a value that this organization saw and was one of the ways that they funded their ITAM program. So that said, that's just something to keep in mind as we're talking through tonight. You know, we're very much going to be focusing on what ITAM is, but we're also going to talk about how it is the cornerstone of cybersecurity practices, because let's face it, those guys are the ones with the big pay checks. They've got funds to pay for things to make sure the company stays safe. So as I go through this evening, I'm going to be I'm going to be open for questions. Please interact, quite happy to take questions as we're going along rather than build it all up to the end. We'll also do a couple of little polls as we go along as well. So to interact directly with me, I'll see the questions on my tablet here. You can go to slido.com and put that number in, or if you want to put your smartphone up towards the QR code there, that will then also allow you to connect to the platform. Again, you'll be able to ask questions and also put in responses to the polls as we go along. And I'm going to have a poll just at the end of the next slide, so it'd really be great if we can see those entries coming up on there. So, as I say, I'm Stuart Dickin. I am the Principal Consultant and Practice Lead for IT Asset Management at Be Digital. My background includes design and delivery of ITAM programs both in the public and the private sectors, working with organisations from a few hundred users right through to some of the largest and most diverse companies in the world with hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of users. Over the last 25 years, I've built on those experiences to deliver hundreds of millions of pounds, dollars, euros, whatever currency you want to talk in tangible cost savings and cost avoidances. You know, IT asset management is a way for bringing in savings into an organization, as long as you can define what those savings are. I hear so many people saying, it's savings, it's savings. Cost avoidance is not always a saving. Ask an accountant. So along those 25 years or so, I've had lots of fun. I've been around the world. ITAM's me traveling to the US an awful lot, and I can see in the participant list there, I can see a couple of my old US colleagues are in fact in the chat with us this evening, so welcome to those. But yeah, I've delivered ITAM in 6 of the 7 continents, and I'm still looking for that delivery that needs doing on Antarctica, so that I can say that I've been to all 7 continents with this. So as I promised there, I'm going to do a quick poll to starters, just see where we are with things. So I'm going to ask that question of what is your level of experience with ITAM on a scaling of 1 to 5? If you just scan that QR code or go to the website and just click on the star ratings there, 1 to 5. 1 being I'm brand new, what is ITAM? And the others being I am an ITAM guru at the top end. We're seeing some responses coming in now. Middle of the range seems to be the main piece. Oh, well, we've got some really newbies as well. Wonderful. Always good to see some new people that are wanting to understand more and more about this topic. We'll give that a few more moments for people to respond. What have we got in the room? We've got 30 or so in the room. Good. We've got 12 or so responses so far. Well, we've got nobody admitting to being an ITAM guru. That's good. It means I can say whatever I want then, and people will just have to believe me. Wonderful. Right. Okay. So good mix of people there. A good starting position with a few people heading up towards the top end of that. We'll look to move forward then with the next slide on here. And my computer jumping ahead of me. So let's start off with that statement of what is IT asset management. IT asset management stands for Information Technology Asset Management. You'll see lots of variations around this and lots of subsets. You'll hear software asset management, hardware asset management, enterprise asset management. There's lots of different subsets that sit within ITAM, but we're talking about this as a generalistic term, so we're going to be talking about software, hardware, data, all of that falling under those categories as we talk tonight. What we're talking about is the processes, the strategy, and the governance that's required around the acquisition, the deployment, the utilization, and the disposal of IT assets. And remembering, IT assets these days are becoming more and more virtualized. It may actually be a service, so it could be your AWS or Azure infrastructure. You could be considering those as those IT assets because they still need to be managed and understood. So why is ITAM so important? In short, it enables the organization to achieve maximum value from their IT assets and minimizing the risk that's also associated with them. When you bring something into the organization, it starts as an asset, but it can very rapidly become a risk or a liability to your organization as well. So what we're looking to do in ITAM is manage the full life cycle, setting an asset strategy as it comes into the organization, ensuring that that strategy is aligned to business concepts and that the business is using that asset in the way that it was designed in that strategy. And then finally, we want to make sure that it exits out of the organization. IT asset disposal is another phrase that you may hear in this sector. The disposal is becoming more and more important now. You'll see lots of posts around sustainable IT, around green IT. IT asset management helps you understand what assets should be in the organization and how they should be disposed of. It's not just a case of making sure that the asset is suitably wiped at the end of its life, but is it being disposed of in the correct way? I'm currently working with an organization that's very much around the beautification and the national assets that are within the country. And talking with them, it's not about the money, it's about the reputation. If an asset of theirs was found in a fly tip somewhere, as an example, and it had their logo on it, it had their information on it, that would probably do more damage to their reputation and their PR as a bastion of looking after the country rather than anything would be on a financial reason for losing that asset. So again, the follow-on from making sure that you understand why an asset is coming into the organization. When it's deployed within the organization, you want to make sure that you understand that it has been optimized in its use within the organization. I've genuinely worked for a company in the past where we found servers that had been deployed and then never actually used. And this was as an asset management company. So really was bad on us for not managing those assets correctly in that manner. We weren't keeping things how we should do ourselves. The tag point that I've put on tonight's session is about how this relates to cybersecurity. The simple answer is it is the corner of cybersecurity. If your business does not effectively manage its assets, it cannot manage its cybersecurity risks. You need to know what assets you have, where they are, and how they are being used. Otherwise, you don't understand what those risks are within your business. To use that old phrase, knowledge is power when it comes to this area. So I'm going to briefly pause for a moment and just check, does that make sense to everybody? Has anybody got any questions on that overview of what ITAM is before we go any deeper onto anything? You can put the questions into Slido, into Zoom, or I'm not sure if have we got this open so people can open their mics?
Yes, people should be able to come off mute. If they're having any issues in trying to come off mute, if they just pop a message in the chat, and either myself or Martin will find them on the list and take them off mute.
Define asset. And of course, sorry, I forgot to mention on the Slido stuff, that's completely anonymous by choice if you want. So you can put your name against a question if you want, or you can leave it anonymous. So if you don't feel confident in putting your name against it, feel free just to put those anonymous things. So define asset is an absolutely superb question, and one I workshop very regularly with clients. So an asset is what is something of value to your organization. That value could be in the fact that it holds information, or it could be a financial point of view. You know, if I speak to the accounting or the finance departments, they're always going to say an asset is something that is on an asset register, something that we have put on our capital, on our registers of what is making value to the business. If I speak to someone in information security, an asset is something that holds data. So it is a very fluid term in the form of IT asset management. It is basically anything that has critical value to your business. It is the general place that I tend to end up. Cool. Nothing else on the Slido for the moment. Nothing on, oh, we've got 2 comments in the chat. Yeah, so we're hearing that so far. Right, so let's talk about some of the benefit side of IT asset management, why we would actually want to do this. So I mentioned savings before. We may also refer to that as cost reductions or cost optimization. By effectively managing those IT assets, IT organizations within the business can identify where there is underutilized or unused elements within the organization. So we've got expenses, we've seen everybody make this mass move towards cloud operations as part of the COVID responses and post-COVID. We see Microsoft Office 365 is now the preferred platform as opposed to Microsoft Office 2016, 2019, those on-premise versions that were around. So we are now paying for those assets on a month-by-month basis, rather than I bought it 4 years ago and I'm still using it. So from an IT asset management point of view, those on-premise things, I will sweat them hard. I'll make sure I get my £300, £400 cost of a license of Office out of it. And quick one as well, anybody that's not spotted that, Office 2013 went completely end of life last year. So if you've got Office 2013 on your estate, you need to get that off there, because that is now very much a security vulnerability and may breach some of your regulatory requirements. And so we spent that 300, we've got 5 years worth of use out of it, but now it doesn't matter whether I use it or not, I've got that return out of it. If I've now moved into my subscription-based environment, I'm paying $12 a month or £12 a month, whatever it may be, and I'm spending that constantly, whether I use it or not. So with a previous organisation I used to work with, we did pieces around 365 assessments to see what people are actually using with on there. Typically I would see around 45% of subscription licenses not actively being used. I genuinely had one customer, 75% of the licenses that they bought for Office 365 were not in use. And this is where IT asset management comes into place. It needs to understand what the licenses are that are out there, what the costs are around it, and understand where that comes. So lots of things that can be done around the software side of it. If we talk about the hardware side of things, we can then say, I think it was Intel that put the information out a couple of years ago now, so these numbers may have changed slightly, but a desktop computer provided to an employee that is 4 years old costs twice as much to support in year 4 than it does in year 1. So there is very much a need to make sure that you are recycling through your assets, not just for the direct cost of the PC itself, but those associated service costs that sit around that. So yeah, we really want to drive cost reductions within the organization, cost savings within the organization, and make sure that we are getting the best return of investment on those assets. Now, that's not a responsibility of the ITAM team, that's a responsibility of all of us within our organizations. And what we're doing is that we are using that information to make those decisions. We are not forcing those decisions. Talking with a colleague earlier today, there is this provision, what's the right word, view by a lot of people that actually SAM managers and ITAM managers make decisions and do things. Actually, we're data analysts. We are people that are providing information to the business that will allow them to make a business decision. It's not for us to make a decision. I saw a post on LinkedIn a while back ago, a SAM manager's guide to removing Java from your network. I'll be clear, my view here, and this is echoed by Gartner on a recent post that they've put out, our role as SAM and ITAM people is to provide governance and advice. It's not for us to tell the business that Java should not be on the network. It's for the business to tell us these are the tools that we need, and it's for us to provide governance to make sure that they have been managed and used in the correct way. So that also leads us into operational efficiencies as well. There is so much that can be done by finding the right way to use these products, accurate information about the IT assets. I'm sure you all out there within your businesses have some sort of directory services like Active Directory. You'll have antivirus software or anti-malware software that is out there. You will have an operations management system like System Center out there. All of these things have lots and lots of information about assets. And what we want to do is try and bring all of that together and say, hey, look, where is the best set of data? How can we bring this all together to understand what is out there and how we can more effectively use these things, making those links, providing the good data to colleagues that are responsible for CMDB, for example, to talk around these are the assets and these are the potential relationships between them. These are the potential security risks. It's all about making sure that you are optimized for efficiency, which gives you those cost reductions. Oops. I've got to watch my mouse fingers there, I keep jumping ahead. So we're done operational efficiencies, and then finally there's compliance and regulations. Compliance is the bit that everybody thinks of when they think about software asset management. I've already mentioned this here. I'm not an advocate of that being the first and for some people the final place that they go to. Compliance is very much a byproduct of doing these things right. You want business value for your organization, and by doing that, you will automatically become a compliant state. But there is also other areas where we talk about regulations. Many of you, I'm sure, are in regulated environments. If you're processing payments, you may have card payments on your system. You need to make sure you're up to date there. We're all going to be responsible for GDPR and stuff like that. If you are running databases and things holding personal information on older or potentially compromised database or an older or compromised operating system, your fines under GDPR will be a lot higher if you cannot show you're doing these types of activities around IT asset management to make sure that that's all in control. So we're talking about compliance of regulations, we're talking about compliance of licenses. All of these are the things that tend to get people started on these journeys of software asset management, but it absolutely should not be the be all and end all. And this is what we're saying around our next slide here. You know, compliance is what everybody was talking about. Well, when I started in this industry 25 years ago, you know, it was all about software license compliance, software license compliance. We're now starting to the evolution of that conversation and talking about how we provide value to the business, how we provide governance to the business and reduce risk within our business. So I'm going to pause again there and just check, is everybody still with us? Any questions that we've got at this point?
There's nothing on chat on Zoom.
Wonderful, and nothing popping up on Slido at the moment, so we will look to carry on then. So where should ITAM sit within your organisation? You know, this again is another workshop question that I go through on a day-by-day basis, not even week-by-week basis. And again, referencing this Gartner document, the reference numbers there at the bottom of the screen if you want to look to get a copy of this. By 2026, organisations that have repositioned software asset managers from a centralized execution to a strategic governance and oversight will have 30% more efficient software spend than those that do not. I think this is absolutely superb statement coming out of Gartner a couple of weeks ago. I think they put this out because it's absolutely true. You know, we've had so much focus on everybody has to do the same thing and it all should be centrally controlled. I'm working with an organization at the moment, and literally last year they went out to the business and said, who's got asset managers? We're going to bring them all internally and they're going to be centralized out of one group. Unfortunately for them, that's when they realized they don't actually have any asset managers. So they haven't centralized it. They're now looking at what is the best practice and strategy for going forward. But this is where we're really reiterating the fact that ITAM is not a team's responsibility. It's the business responsibility. If we don't have control over this, we will not have the value that comes out of this. Working with a public sector organization last year, we used SAM mentality, so the what's called an effective license position. So this is where we take what licenses somebody owns, what deployments they've got and what usage they've got of those software titles. And we managed to get them a 48% discount on what was already deemed to be the best commercial deal with a publisher in the public sector. So there is lots of good value here that you can take out from an IT technical space, work with those procurement and commercial people and get to a position of real value for the organization. These, if I remember roughly figures, we were talking about the project cost them about 2 million, but they saved roughly about 4 million. And that's an ongoing 4 million saving as well. So you know, the return of investment can be very quick on some of these projects if you have the data available and that data is trustworthy. And this is where we're going to start talking about heading more towards our security concept and working around there. You know, risk management, this is where I actually see IT asset management truly and utterly sits, because everything that comes in as an asset eventually becomes a risk or a liability. So what we're looking to do is identify those risks and look to mitigate them and minimize the impact that potentially may hit within our organization. So let's go through a few of these of how we can do this. So identifying these risks, you know, the first part of this is ensuring that we've got properly documented, tracked and identified assets and understanding where they may sit. Because if we've got documentation of when they first arrived, great, wonderful. but then it's quite easy for an asset to be moved around. So, it's like, I joined an organization, I start off in the marketing department, then I move to the delivery department, and then I move to the project management department. Understanding where that asset sits and where the potential risks, it's all visibility for the business. They all need to understand where these things happen. I may have had the same computer and the same software for that time period that I've worked across those 3 different departments. When I was in the marketing department, I may have been given some very, very expensive Adobe licenses around Creative Suite there. I don't need those when I'm doing roles within a project management, but we could still be paying our subscription fees to Adobe if we're not careful. So identifying out of age or out of date and out of supported software and hardware that within our business, again, customer working with at the moment, very much focusing on obsolescence, because this is where you end up with those security risks popping up that you don't know, and you don't even know that they're there. Again, public sector organization working with, we were doing a piece around Red Hat. We actually identified that 2/3 of their network was running on unsupported versions of Red Hat Linux. So these are very much areas that it's easy to take your eye off, because you've set these systems up, they're running, they're not broken, you don't touch them. But this is where asset management can come along and help organizations see this is a potential risk for us. Ensuring that all IT assets are properly configured and maintained. This is absolutely key to your cyber plans, of course. It's great that you've got these vulnerability tools and everything that are going out there, but a lot of the asset management tools out there will do a lot of the basics for you. I presented at a conference in Florida, I think it was a good couple of years ago now, and we were showing internally what we could do with IT asset management. And I was pointing out the amount of different BIOS update versions that were across our laptop estate that we had within the business, and could see the IT manager was getting very uncomfortable in his seat, to the point of giving me signs and indications that we need to move on, because he didn't want this information out there. So there is lots to understand there that people may or may not be aware of what's going on in the business. Shadow IT, of course, understanding where shadow IT has leaked into your organization. It has become so easy now for end users to go along and subscribe to Dropbox or something like that, where they don't actually need the IT department's approval to get things up and running. They just get them going forward. So again, IT asset management can help identify those risks around there. And then also the personal devices, all those types of things that come along that are just a potential vulnerability for them. And we're talking software and hardware here. I can't remember the last time I didn't see computer games on a corporate network. They always find their way on there somewhere, and typically they will be gambling software, poker or something like that. They always tend to find their way in there. I can see we've got a question on Slido, so I'm just going to check in on that one. In a cloud-first world where dev teams have almost free reign for hosting providers such as Azure, does the ITAM processes change in tracking and identifying risks? Very valid point, as we were just talking about there, of shadow IT. The governance and the responsibility to understand the risks to the business still remains there with the ITAM, but the processes may change slightly in how you actually do it. There are plenty of tools out there that will go out and do cloud assessments, work out what products you're using, where they are, use the authentication tools to understand what products have been authenticated to use. So yeah, the responsibilities still stay there. The process does not change, but probably the procedures do change. Are there any recommended approaches to discovering shadow IT? Follow the money. Absolutely. I would always be an advocate of this. There are plenty of technology tools out there that can go out and do assessments, as I was saying, against single sign-on services. You've also got the capabilities, depending how your finance systems are set up, for spend analysis. So going in and going, right, okay, here are all the expenses that have gone through the system. Let's identify which of these are going to known IT service providers and things like that. I've got another question in here. How do organizations fare from ITAM perspective now that bring your own device principles are being adopted? So again, another great question, and the responsibilities of the business don't change. You know, just because the device that is being used is not owned by them, they still have responsibilities to make sure that the software is being legally used, it's being used within the right conditions. The same way that you would do a security vetting to make sure that those devices meet your security standards, you need to make sure that all the software on there meets those same standards. It may not even actually be that it's a licensing condition. It could be a right of use condition. Working with an organization that was in the betting industry, they were using a lot of stuff on some of the cloud platforms, but the cloud platform based out of America had a condition on there that you could not use their platform for any sort of gambling or betting. So whilst they were legally compliant by the contract, they were not compliant by the right to use on the product. So there's lots of things that need to take into account, and this is where the ITAM teams are moving more into those governance roles and helping the business understand their rights and their responsibilities, as opposed to just saying, hey, have we got the right number of licenses? Another question in here as well. We've talked a lot about risk. Who should be the risk owner related to software, the ITAM area or the individual product delivery managers? This is quite a simple answer. In most countries, it is the directorship. It's they have the legal responsibility for the business. So therefore, if we're talking about whether we've bought the right number of licenses, it's the board, it's the directors that are going to be held responsible for those positions. Now, do we all have accountability to those licenses and who they are? Absolutely. I think that there needs to be down at the individual product managers. So we all have accountability for it, but whose neck is on the line, so to speak, it's always at that highest level. Wonderful. Right, they've slowed down, so let's move on to the next slide. So we'll talk about some risks, and again, we've covered a lot of this already, so I'll probably jump through a lot of this. You know, the benefits or that we see here and the risks kind of counter across each other. So security breaches resulting from unidentified unidentified unsecured IT assets. That's a big issue for us. Our non-compliance pieces, as we've just been talking about there, our processes and making sure everything that is being done as it should be. Productivity around our processes, making sure that they're all working, and also the utilization of our assets. You know, we spend a lot of money on IT assets, whether it's hardware, software, data, services. It's a lot of money, and we need to make sure that we're getting that return of investment on it. You know, if we've got a server that's sat in our comms room that is just there because it holds the old SQL database that is the old system, just in case somebody needs to spin it up, hey, how much is that costing us on energy to keep up? How much is it costing us on licensing? How much is it costing us on cooling? These are all areas that we need to make sure that we are getting the return of investment on our products that we have purchased for business reasons, and making sure that those business reasons are still valid is also true. You know, I'm sure plenty of you have seen those occasions where we spin up these big, massive IT projects, and then 6 months later, there's a change of leadership, change of direction within the organization, and suddenly that IT project is not as important anymore. This happens all the time. We need to make sure that we're adhering to that. Click through. So some key components for success. Defining procedures, you know, absolutely make sure that this is documented and understood, whether that's your strategy, your process, your step-by-step procedures. All of this needs to be understood and communicated out within the organisation. Everybody needs to know that they have a degree of responsibility within the managing of those assets. Trustworthy data. Any of you that managed to attend our session in Warrington last month, this was a great topic of conversation. Trustworthy data, and I don't mean having lots and lots of data. I mean having good quality data that you can trust. I'm a practitioner from information security principles as well, and we talk about it as CIA there. Confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility. That's what builds you your trustworthy data. You have to have the right data at the start. You need to be able to show that it's not been tampered with, and it needs to be able to be accessed at the right times by the right people. I see lots and lots of people talk about cleansing data and normalizing data. Hot topic at the moment, AI. We talk about AI cleaning the data. That to me is a potential risk because you are trusting a black box. Making sure data is right at the beginning of the chain rather than cleaning it somewhere in the middle of the chain is absolutely important to make sure that it is trustworthy data. Monitoring and review. You heard me talk about this a little bit as we were through the last couple of slides. Just because something came into your organization today on the reason that we needed to buy it because Project X was spinning up, is Project X still running 5 years later, 10 years later? Systems get left turned on for an awful long time. So making sure that you are monitoring and reviewing not just the assets themselves, but also your processes and your procedures around managing them. And this is, again, coming back to our information security point of view. This is a collaborative journey. This is not something to do on your own as a silo of ITAM. There are many, many parts of your business that want ITAM data and are supported by ITAM data. It fundamentally is the thread that fins through your IT organization. Your service desk need to understand where assets are. Your finance guys want to know the depreciation value of products. Your security guys want to know where the vulnerabilities are. The list just goes on and on. So finally, that then leads into collective goals. I've seen so many organizations that say, our goal for asset management is to be license compliant. That's great, wonderful, great aspirations. Let's make sure that also those goals link to the business objectives. I started off 25 years ago working in a public sector organization, and it's a philosophy I've taken with me everywhere I go. There is no point me having an objective of having license compliance if that does not feed through to one of our business objectives. I'm going to pause again for a moment there because I think I've just seen a question pop up on the Zoom chat. What have we got there? What questions? Sorry, what questions should one check when evaluating a code release against software code liability? Oh, that's an interesting question, and not something I've touched personally since doing escrow agreements a good 10, 15 years ago was the last time I touched them. But yeah, whether you want to include code within this area of asset management, it is definitely an asset to your organization. Understanding where that liability is, making sure that you know any third-party code that's used within there. I reviewed a product for somebody recently, and I think the publisher had actually 12 different other publishers' technology within their software code. So making sure that you understand all of those rights as they trickle down through the systems is really important to make sure that you are covered and indemnified. So if you are deploying, I don't know, let's say a service desk product and it's using Cognos as the reporting tool on the back end of it, you need to make sure that your team internally understand, are you being licensed for Cognos, or is the service desk product being licensed for Cognos? Are you able to add other reporting systems into that Cognos environment? These are all areas that you need to make sure that you understand the potential liabilities of your business. So Another quick question then, after all we've been talking around here, I hope I haven't scared too many people as we've talked here. What would you rate your organization's ITAM maturity as? So once again, you can scan that QR code, you can go to slido.com, put in that meeting code, see where they are. There we go, we've got a few answers coming in now. Good to see some high-end stuff in there as well as the low-end stuff. Middle of the road seems to be the main feel for the moment. Really encouraged to see that 17% hitting the 5-star rating on there. It's really good to hear that there are people there. The bit I would say about when you're assessing your maturity, you tend to be a lot harder on yourself than you would be on someone else's organization. So typically I tend to say, if you think you are a 1, you're probably a 2. If you think you're a 2, you're probably more in a 3 and things like that. There are service providers out there that will do maturity assessments around your SAM practices, completely independent, asking questions that will drive you to think about how you can move forward. There is an ISO standard around this, so you can very much get more information around there to see where you may sit within an organization maturity scale. The best thing is, obviously, if you're at that bottom scale, or you think you're at that bottom scale, that means you've got lots of areas for improvement, lots of potential money that you could save your organization. Let's go on to where's my mouse pointer gone? There we go. Check the time. So starting to wrap this up now then. So, how does this directly link to cybersecurity? Any of you that are aware of the NIST CF critical success factors, this is the wheel there that we see on it. Look at this, asset management, it's specifically named within those critical success factors within cybersecurity. Is very much a component. So if you're struggling to get buy-in for asset management within your organization, look at it this way, go to the security group, say, hey, how are you doing this? Have you got data that I can use? Or maybe I've got data you can use. Back to what we were saying, it's a combined journey, it's a collaborative approach. But it's not just there as well. We've got these other areas that we directly interact with. So if you are involved with asset management and you are not directly working day to day with your security team, you are missing a trick. There is definite value to be had for both parties to be involved there. There we go. Let's talk about a couple of the benefit side of things just briefly on here. The benefits are, it's then a combined journey. It's, if you're looking for funding, you're going to get more and more funding if you can show we're going to have a greater impact within the organization. You're going to get more and more up-to-date expertise. There are skill sets within both sides of cyber and asset management that very, very much support each other. By combining those tool sets, combining those expertise, you're going to get better tracking, you're going to get better management, and you're going to have reduced risk within your organization. So the overall benefit is reduced risk to the organization. After all, that is what we're all looking for in this world of managing IT. So I'm going to close up now with just saying, right, British Computer Society, you've all come tonight on the back of a BCS message. Wonderful, great to see. There is a specific service management and IT asset management special interest group. Myself and I have spotted a couple of my other committee members are on the call with us today. We have a number of events talking about service management, IT asset management, and all the lovely subjects that link on to those. We have regular monthly meets. About a quarter of those are up here in the Northwest, or the North generally. We're going to keep pushing those forward. The next London event is down in April 18th. So next week, you can register for that. If you have a look on the QR code there, I think I've got the registration link on there. If I haven't, I will put it on in the next 5 minutes or so after the session. If you've got any questions, you want to reach out to me, by all means, feel free to email me there. You can talk to me about BCS stuff. You can talk to me about direct business stuff. Absolutely happy to help in any way. So I'm going to just quickly dive onto our Q&A bits and see if we've got any extras that we've not covered there. Right, so we covered off that one. So do asset discovery tools identify open source software included in addition to closed source software? Yes, absolutely. Open source, I've had this conversation in the past. There's been a person saying, I don't need to worry, I use open source software. Well, no, you still need to track and understand these bits of software, how they're being used within your organization. The level of information that's collected around version patch is very open to interpretation, is probably the polite way to put it. Depending who's created that open source code, they may have put that information in, they may not. If you're using asset discovery tools, inventory tools, they may have a library in the background that looks those up and gives a bit more information where necessary. And then what else have we got here? Would you say ITAM should be within the HR processes for understanding colleagues and therefore hardware and software? Absolutely. You know, one of my colleagues, Rory, he does some great stuff about process packs. His organisation is called Sam Charter. If you want to have a look at some of his videos on YouTube, and he does a great piece on joiners, leavers, and movers processes. ITAM is a core part of that. We all look at COVID. All this IT equipment went out to people's homes. Most organizations didn't have a realistic understanding of what went out. So when people either moved back to the office or potentially left the organization, most HR departments wouldn't have had a clue what monitors had gone home, what laptops had gone home, what docking things. All of these things should be included. And again, it's a collaborative approach. It's about bringing value to the business. So that's the last of the questions I've got on there, and I can see we just got a thank you message on the Zoom point. So I'm just going to scroll this back to the, where are we? There, so the link tree QR that you can get through to contact details and what have you, and just go open up now if anybody wants to open up their mic and ask questions, or whether anybody wants to add any more questions elsewhere. I think we've probably got all of about 10 minutes left on time.
While people are deciding whether they do or don't want to brave the camera, shall we say, I personally would like to say thank you very much to you, Stuart, for what has been incredibly information-filled and thought-provoking talk. I know I personally attended the special interest group last month, and it is very intuitive and very interesting, and everybody isn't super friendly. So if you are interested in knowing more about the subject in incredible depth from master specialties, I would definitely recommend it. But no, tonight it's been wonderful. It's been fantastic to get the introduction, and maybe in the future we can get you back for an intermediate chat rather than an introduction chat.
Absolutely, more than happy to help. And I say if anybody wants to reach out, they're not comfortable asking an open forum, feel free to email me there, or my contact details are also on that QR code.
Brilliant. Have you managed to have any further questions coming through on Slido there, Stuart?
No, we are complete on the Slido questions. Complete
on Slido. I'm not seeing anything else on the Zoom chat. We're on Zoom at the moment, not Teams. So what I'll do is I'll give it another 60 seconds. If you've got questions, please bob them through in the next 60 seconds. If not, we will give you 9 minutes back of your evening to go and enjoy yourselves. Okay, getting a few thank yous coming through on the Zoom chat, saying it's been a great session. So echoing that, very useful. So obviously echoing the thoughts of, yeah, definitely useful, informative session. And thank you very much.
Thank you everybody for your time. Enjoy your evening, and hopefully speak to some of you again soon.